My name is Tsetsele Fantan. I was at Swanning Hill School between the years of 1966, which is when I did my Form 1, and I completed my O-levels in 1970. Other family members who were in Swanning were my brother, Winston Moloi Sekgoma, who did his O-levels only because he had completed his JC in Lesotho, and my sister Valerie Dasi Sekgoma, later on Sinombe, who was in Swanning for a full 5 years. But we do have our older brother, Mukutwane Sekgoma, who taught at Swanning for 1 year after he completed his O-levels in, I think it was Mueng College. And while he was awaiting to go to tertiary education, he taught Setswana in the very early years. I think he was there in the year 63 or 64.
At the beginning of the school.
At the beginning of the school. I guess they didn't have many Setswana teachers available, and there he was waiting to go for tertiary education. Yes.
Okay.
So I think you can say that Swanning has educated my siblings, so it was like a family school for us, although we were not all there at the same time. Yes. When I completed my O-levels, I got a government scholarship. I went to the University of Botswana, Lesotho and Swaziland, but the campus here in Gaborone, when they first broke away and started here, so we were some of the very first group of students who started the university campus here. So that's where I was. I went for 2 years there, which was, I guess, the equivalent of A-levels or Part 1, as it was called. And then I got a DBS scholarship and I went to study overseas, where I studied sociology with a major in social research. But because I was sponsored by a mining company, I didn't have an opportunity to go into research. Instead, I went into human resources, which is the career that I have followed and are still doing even now. So I actually don't regret it, even though sometimes when I see research as part of the work that I do, I just wish perhaps this is an area that I would have enjoyed. But I didn't, and I don't regret the career that I ended up in. I think things have gone very well for me. I worked for DBS, for Debswana later on, for a full 25 years. And when I was there, I did rise to the pinnacle of an HR career because I left at the level of Group Human Resources Manager here in Gaborone. So after 25 years with Debswana, I went and joined ACHAP, which is the partnership between the Gates Foundation and Merck, the drug company. They have a project here, as you know, where they had donated 100 million pula over a 5-year period. 100 million. Yeah, over a 5-year period to fight HIV and AIDS. So I headed that project for a period of 3 years. At the end of that 3 years, I was tired of working in an organization. So I decided that I would start my own company, where I do consultancy in human resources. The company is called Headway Consulting, and that is the work that I do currently. I like it because I can work from home. I have my flexible hours. I pick and choose the work that I enjoy doing, so I don't have to work within a structure of the corporate. So I work at my own pace. I select the work that I want to do.
And there's minimal office politics.
And minimal organizational politics, and you don't have to manage a staff and trade unions and stuff like that. So I work on my own. I don't have any intention of growing the company per se in terms of moving out into the city, etc. But I do collaborate in my work with a team of other consultants, because often you get very interesting work where you need other skills that you don't have. So I have a group of associates with whom I work. I have a lady that works with me most of the time, who is very strong in the training and development area and organizational strategy. And then I have another lady who is a psychologist, and an industrial psychologist. We have a lawyer, and we have accountants that we work with. So there's that collaboration. And in all the work that I've done, it's worked very well that they each run their own individual companies. And when I have work, I will pick the person that I need to work with as a result of the work. And I think this collaboration has worked very well for us.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been running the company?
The company since 2007,
oh,
2007, yes.
So it's almost 6 years.
It's almost 6 years that I've been running this company. Mm-hmm. Now, back to Swaneng, I guess, right? I think, my years in Swaneng were very, very fulfilling, both academically and socially. I formed a lot of friends at Swaneng. Many of them we still keep in touch even now. And my best friend that I found at Swaneng is my husband, and we have been married now for 40 years. Prior to getting married, we went out for 6 years, and we have 2 lovely children who are both married now, and each one of them has now given us a granddaughter. So that is a sort of long-lasting relationship that I have formed at Swaneng Hill School. But I have relationships even with some of the former teachers. Mm-hmm. Tom Holzinger is one of my former teachers that I've kept a good relationship with. He visited us when we were studying in the UK, and we still keep in touch even now. So I think from that point of view, it worked well. I also participated in many of the school activities. I played softball, I played volleyball, I participated in the building projects that we did at school, in the farming projects that were done at school. I played a leading role in Shakespearean plays. Mm-hmm. I acted in the Merchant of Venice as Portia. I had a very active school life. Not that I ever excelled in sports or anything like that, but I did enjoy participating in sports. As I say, I had a range of sports. In particular, I think volleyball and softball were things that appealed to me because they were new to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, we came from a primary school where, as girls, all you did was either do athletics or play what we call basketball. Then, this one, I think it sort of grew into netball. Later on. But when we played it, it was called basketball, and it has different rules. So when you got to a school that offered new things like softball and volleyball, it was really interesting for us to join that sort of sporting game activity. So I was not a very good runner, so I can't say I ran fast, but I participated generally in most of the things that were done at school. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of the philosophy and ethos of the school, I think that Swaneng has been an eye-opener for all of us that went there. An eye-opener in that we came from a very rigid British educational system where there was a lot of formality. Not that there was anything wrong with it. I think some children thrived better under that rigidity and formality, etc. Children that would have gone astray, perhaps that needed more structure, were better off in that system. But there were others that I think would have thrived even better in a Swaneng scene. And therefore Swaneng was good in that it was more liberal. The principles there were principles of, first of all, self-reliance, the principle of self-discipline, the principle where you valued manual work. So I think it was the principle of educating the whole person. As opposed to just academic excellence, you had to develop the total being. And I think that in itself was a great eye-opener for all of us. I think one can say that perhaps Patrick van Rensburg was ahead of his time in those days, because today we do talk about holistic education. And I would say that this education that he offered there was very, very holistic. The issues of, manual work, which I think some people now might frown upon, that students do manual work. And I think we hear very sad stories, and we see sad stories of school grounds that are dirty. When it has rained, you see that the grass is growing and there's nobody to cut it, because everybody is expecting central government to hire people to do this. In our days, if you wanted the school grounds cleaned, you cleaned them yourselves. We built the school hall in Swaneng and many other classrooms. So from that point of view, I just think that that whole philosophy was good, because it's something that carried people all the way even to their their lives after school, so to speak. I mean, I did bricklaying. So when we've been involved in our own building projects, the builders have been surprised that I was able to know what instruments they use in order to check, for example, that
they're doing things accordingly.
The spirit levels and stuff like that. So, I mean, the whole concept was really good. We didn't just build for ourselves in Swaneng. We organized work camps. I mean, we went to, in particular, the one that was really memorable for me was a project that we did in Tsetsele, where we went to Tsetsele as Swaneng students to go and help them build their school. I can't remember whether it was a classroom or a laboratory that we built there.
It was the science labs.
That was the science labs. Then, of course, there are the other schools, the Shashe River School that sprouted as a result of the Swaneng philosophy. So I would say that Mr. Van Rensburg has done a lot for the education system in this country and for this country in general, and for individuals that have been through both those schools. And perhaps, as some people have said, this is high time that the government found a way of honoring Mr. Van Rensburg. The type of honor, I'm not sure. I don't know whether just naming some educational institution, naming it Patrick Van Rensburg, would be enough. But I would say that something that is in fact would remain for many, many years, because people would always ask, who is Patrick Van Rensburg? And I think that sort of thing would really be good to do. So I really think that he opened everybody's eyes. So I would say that that was my experience at Swaneng Hill School.
Okay, so do you have any last words to conclude your story?
I would say that the government really needs to look at some of the values that were espoused by this man, because they could really assist. I mean, I know many organizations, for example, that would organize a group of students to go and build in another country. It's the same concept. We seem to have lost it in our own country. We are developing young people who think that you cannot build anything without hiring someone else to do it for you. You see classrooms that are dilapidated. You see classrooms that have become, unusable because the roof isn't there, the paint is falling off. The Patrick Van Rensburg era and the students of Swaneng would have quite easily put things together and made sure that their school was up and running without having to ask government to go. I mean, all that you needed was somebody to give the material. The hands are there.
So we should go back to that form of education where self-reliance is a major part.
And self-discipline. I mean, the Patrick Van Rensburg philosophy of saying that children learn better in an environment where they are not coerced, where it's more liberal, I think worked very well at Swaneng. I mean, the teachers were your friends, therefore, because the teacher is your friend and there isn't this formality of yes, sir. I mean, I know it can go too far with certain people, but if you still have respect for a teacher's authority, etc. If you still have respect in that regard, it has worked very well. I just think that it worked well that people had the freedom to ask, and the only way you are free to ask in an environment where you feel unthreatened. Where you are friendly. Because when you get out into the field and you are hoeing and building with your teacher next to you, there's a teaching opportunity for him as well, because you can then ask about things that perhaps you didn't quite understand. He also gets an opportunity because he knows his students well. He might ask you the question in a more practical way, a more informal way, where you'd be able to have that one-to-one interaction with the teacher without the threat of thinking other students are going to laugh at you. I don't know where our students now, in what places they get an opportunity to interact with the teacher in an informal way. Whereas in the Swaneng environment, where on Saturdays you did your community work, you walked to Serowe, with your teachers. You know, you were in the field with them. You went and did the brigade thing with the teacher. I think that in itself built that cohesion that you want in a school.
And basically the whole school would move forward.
The whole school moved forward. I mean, we went in different groups because some people would go for the farming bit, other people would go and do the horticultural bit, you know. So we all had projects to do at weekends.
Was there a rotation among the projects?
Yes, it was, although people tended to pick what they enjoyed most, but you were given an opportunity to try your hand at everything. I mean, the majority of us, I found, were in the building projects, and I think that's because once the principal, the school actually gave you the reasons why, or the imperative for why you needed to do this, then you saw the urgency, I guess, to put up your school hall. To put up this classroom, because otherwise the next group that will come, the Form 1s will come, and you will also suffer. You will be cramped. I think that it was a very good way of getting the students to do work, basically. So work that was needed.
Tell me about Patrick van Rensburg when all these projects were happening. Was he a hands-on instructor, or he just simply stood there and said, okay, this is what people should do?
Yeah. You must understand that the role of a leader becomes very complex once the system grows. Once you have more students, I mean, how many years? When I started Form 1, they had been going since Form 3. He had more urgent things to do, like raising funds for the school. And I'm sure that he had many other political battles to do than actually be there. But yes, I imagine that at the beginning, he would have been there in order to encourage the students. But he was never an absent principal. He was always there. You would see him walking around the projects on a Saturday morning. You know, he would take a shovel here and there, but I would say that he had much more critical leadership issues to deal with. He had to deal with the local authorities, he had to deal with the government, he had to start looking for money and teachers overseas and so forth. So I think his role became more of the leader that he should have been, although he was never absent from Swaneng.
And other students from other schools, how did they view the Swaneng students?
You know, I must say that we never really cared about what people were thinking. If they thought that we were a bunch of fools, etc., I never heard anybody criticize us. I mean, we knew people that went to Mueding College, who went to Kale, and so forth. I think they just saw us as a unique, different school. I never ever got to hear that people were criticizing us. I think many envied us because, as I say, we didn't have compulsory uniform. You know, the uniform was not compulsory. I think many envied the freedom that we had at Swaneng, which they didn't have. But of course, parents always dictate where your child is going. So I don't know that many parents were in support. I think that many of the Seroe parents were very grateful that because there were not that many boarding secondary schools, that they were very grateful that there was a school in their own village where their children could go to school every morning. I mean, there were many, many students who couldn't get a place in the boarding, but who actually were day scholars. I mean, my husband, who comes from Palape, was put by his grandmother on a truck to say, go to school. And for the first year, I think he had to live in the village, find accommodation in the village, but it was a day scholar coming in and out. And then it was only in Form 2 that he was able to get a place at the hostel. So I think people really were appreciative of the fact that now we have an institution in our own place where our children now have an opportunity to study, whereas had Swaneng not been there, they wouldn't have done. The issue about the philosophy of the school, if there were parents that objected to it, I know that maybe the officials like education officers, etc., thought that this was a crazy system. But I mean, there were much bigger things than worry about whether we wear uniform and worry about what children ate and so forth. So it worked. As I say, I never ever had any criticism from anyone. My parents were certainly in support of the school. By the way, they sent 3 children there, 3 of their own children to that school. They clearly supported it. I mean, there was Mueng College, which was also built by the tribe in Seroe.
Yes.
And I think that if people objected, they might have said, well, I'm sending my child to Mueng. Mueng wasn't big enough to take everybody because Mueng also catered for Botswana. or while it was built by regiments from Seroe, Bangwato regiments, it catered for the whole of Botswana. I mean, there are many people who went to university who actually studied in Moeng from the southern part. So it was a Botswana school, not a Seroe school. So people had equal opportunity of going there or not going there. So Swaneng was a very important aspect of the village, the society. And I mean, even Swaneng didn't just take in students from Seroe. As I've said, it was again students from all over, including South Africa and Zimbabwe. We had students there from Zimbabwe, we had students from South Africa. So, and one of the advantages that we had, and I'm not making comment about the level of teachers and other schools because I don't know what teachers were there, but the teachers that we got were highly educated teachers. There were teachers that were perhaps that left South Africa that could have been teaching at university, but who left because of the political situation there. They taught us at Swaneng. Our mathematics teachers, our English teachers, and so forth, in addition to the IVS volunteers and the American volunteers. So we had highly educated people teaching at Swaneng.
So how eye-opening was it to have, a broad spectrum of nationalities in just one big, like in your environment as a school? You had Americans, South Africans, Zimbabweans. How eye-opening was it for you as a Tswana student then?
Yeah, I had the fortune of having been able to travel to both South Africa and Zimbabwe in my early years. So the exposure to other nations, as far as Zimbabwe and South Africa, I was quite comfortable. I think the eye-opening thing for me was the exposure to Americans in particular. And I mean, the British, some of them had been in South Africa. But when you now get the British people who come from different parts of England, and it is something that you appreciate when you now go to England yourself later on and you listen to these very strange accents and you say, what English is this that they are speaking? And of course the Americans with their rolling of the language and so forth. So it was an eye-opener from that point of view, but also very exciting because you actually got to sit and talk to them and know where they come from. So geography became reality. So you hear about Mississippi, this huge river in America. You would otherwise have just been reading about it. When you now hear someone say, "Oh, I come from near there," or "I have seen the river," so it now becomes real for you. So it was an exciting moment, I think, for many of us. But as I say, as far as the region is concerned, I had that exposure because my mother's sister was married in Zimbabwe, and my father's, my grandmother from my father's side came from Mafeking, so we had traveled a lot from that point of view to both places. And my father, I mean, when the protectorate was still headquartered in Mafeking, my father traveled a lot there, and his lawyers all were in Mafeking, so we had that exposure. So if anybody needed to go for medical treatment, specialist treatment, Mafeking was the place. So we had that exposure, but it was more the Americans and the British that were, and the Mr. Kovalis from Europe.
Okay, thank you very much for your interesting input.
Thank you so much.